Welcome back to Proof of Culture, where we dive into the cultural forces driving the Web3 revolution. Today, I'm so excited to sit down with Matt Mason, who is quite literally a creative pioneer working at the intersection of technology, culture, and media. Matt has built a career by pushing the boundaries of content, commerce, and creativity. Today, Matt continues to push forward as the co-founder of BASEJump, a platform that is redefining how brands and creators work together in Web3, and Broadside, a groundbreaking decentralized storytelling project that blurs the lines between community-driven narratives, gaming, and digital collectibles. In this episode, I talk with Matt about how these initiatives are transforming the way that creators and communities interact with digital ownership. We talk about his background in pirate radio and also the potential of decentralized storytelling. Join me as we uncover the exciting possibilities of Web3 through the lens of one of its leading creative minds. So, Matt Mason, thank you so much for joining me here on the Proof of Culture podcast. I think it's been a while since you and I have spoken. Full disclosure, you and I work together.
That's true.
Palm NFT studio. But today, these days, you are the CEO of Broadside, Dazzleship, BASEJump.
I don't even know anymore. It's BASEJump.
It's BASEJump.
But
You're
yeah.
CEO of BASEJump. We're going to get into that. But as I ask every guest here on the podcast, what is your origin story? How did you get here to Web3?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'm glad that we're talking about culture today, because for me, it's really always been about culture. And that's not always top of mind, I think, for everybody in Web3. But for me, it starts and ends with this idea of kind of decentralizing culture and empowering more people to be creative, because decentralized ecosystems had a massive impact on me early in life, especially as the sort of when it came to culture creation. I grew up in the UK, in London, very obsessed with rave music and electronic music as a kid growing up in 90s London. And a lot of that music found me through pirate radio. There's all these tiny illegal radio stations. They still exist in the UK, despite the internet and everything we have now. There are still illegal radio stations all over the UK, the world actually. But in the UK, you know, for about $600, you can illegally duct tape a piece of a construction pole to the top of a tower block in London, and you could connect it via infrared to a DJ controller or a set of turntables, and you can reach like 10 million kids. So people have always been doing this. Like, I mean, it sort of started in the UK in the 50s and 60s, but the only reason rock and roll got to the UK was pirate radio. So it was always this kind of way to get culture that was kind of, you know, the things on the edges that you wouldn't find on the BBC yet. So all of the innovation in music would come from this intelligence at the edge, as I like to sort of call it, from pirate radio. So I don't know how old I was. I think I was like 11, 12 when I started getting involved in like handing out flyers for raves and like just getting involved in pirate radio as much as I could. And I was a pretty good kid at school. I didn't like break the law or do a lot of drugs or anything, but I had to be involved in pirate radio, even though it was illegal, even though you could go to prison for it, because I just saw it as this kind of engine of creativity, and it was empowering people I knew around me and friends to, you know, people were hitting the top of the pop charts because 300 or so DJs in London would play a record that otherwise would have never, ever got played anywhere. So that sort of installed this operating system in me that decentralized infrastructure is good. And I sort of was just on a mission to always do that. So yeah, it was this whole kind of world and ecosystem that I was just around for like my formative years, and just met so many amazing people in that world. And then I graduated from college, and I was DJing, I was running clubs, I was running record labels. Like, I thought I knew what the music industry was. And I got an internship at Warner Music, and I went there, and it was just like getting slapped in the face. It's like, wait, oh, this is this is an entirely different music industry, and it's awful. So I got to just understand how this all worked. So there was a room full of these photos of bands and artists. And one of my jobs as an intern was every month they'd hand me a list of bands and artists in that room. And I'd go in there with this big, like, giant wheelie bin garbage can. And I would just take all the artists that they were no longer promoting, and I would have to throw their photos in a bin. It was like, and I knew what was going to happen. Like, those artists, every single one of them got like either like a £75,000 single deal or a £400,000 album deal. They sold all of their rights to Warner, to their their name, their master rights, all of it. And then they got their shot. But then every month I get handed this list because Warner decided, actually, these 10 or 20 artists, we don't think we can market them. They're not getting the shot. But when I threw that photo in the bin, it didn't mean that artists got their rights back or their name back, and it just meant that was it. And people spend years suing labels to get their rights and stuff back. So yeah, it just like, it messed me up. I was like,
it doesn't sound like much has changed though in the music industry anyway.
No, like not much has changed. And then a lot has changed, but in that sort of level, the major label level, no.
Yeah.
Not much has changed at all. I guess the change has been like the Grammys just gone, about half the artists there were independent artists. So like it's changing. The majors aren't changing.
Right.
They're sort of, the way they do things is actually, I think they've got more kind of set in that.
Mm-hmm. I know that you also, it feels to me anyway, that you have a history of being involved in the next big thing, or cutting edge technology, as it were. I know just from knowing you that you've not only done pirate radio, which was way ahead of its time back then, but then you were like at BitTorrent and then Kraken, and then so talk a little bit about how you got to this place we call Web3 now.
Long story short, I ended up founding a music magazine called Rewind, which became the largest music magazine in the UK, just by sort of doing what pirate radio did, was writing about the stuff that wasn't getting written about, which back then was grime, it was dubstep. And as those cultures scaled, Rewind scaled. So that sort of like scaling businesses with culture, with the grain of culture, was something that that's been sort of near and dear to my heart. After Rewind, I wrote a book called The Pirate's Dilemma, which was sort of exploring how do you find ideas from the edge and how they take hold, and thinking about game theory as it relates to piracy. It was a fun thing to write after we sold Rewind, and I toured with that for like 3 years. Just kind of sort of, and it's like 2008. This is right when piracy and file sharing is like the topic du jour. And I was doing a keynote at this big advertising event in Cannes. And the guy on stage after me was the CEO of BitTorrent. And I just thought, that's weird. I thought BitTorrent was a protocol. Like, why does it have a CEO? And there's a company called BitTorrent Inc. And the CEO at the time, a guy called Eric Klinker, he gets on stage and he's like, look, we've got like 100 million or so people using our technology every month. We're not like encouraging them to steal. There's nothing we're doing wrong, but we know that they're going on the Pirate Bay and downloading all this music and all these movies. And he was just like, look, his speech was interesting. It was kind of a cry for help. He was like, there's got to be something we can do. And I'm sitting in the audience watching, and I'm just like, wait a second. This guy's trying to tell me that BitTorrent's the largest pirate radio station in the world, and they just need someone to come in and kind of help them set up a music store. I really want to do this. And so I got chatting to Eric, and next thing I know, I'm moving to San Francisco, and I'm running marketing, and I'm chief content officer at BitTorrent. And it was Eric, he was the first person to say to me that idea of like intelligence at the edge. Like, BitTorrent was a business that was all about distributed computing and decentralized technology, really when nobody else was thinking about it. Like back then, this is like 2011, 2012. If you're an engineer in Silicon Valley and you wanted to work on decentralized anything, the crypto really it didn't exist like it does now. But we started to get interested in that early, and Graham Cohen, the founder and inventor of BitTorrent, he was like, he still says he knows who Satoshi is. And he was definitely talking to him back then, I remember. But I started to get interested in Bitcoin pretty early. And at BitTorrent, we built a way to embed a content store inside a content file. So like instead of getting all of your movies from Netflix or all of your music from Spotify, it was like the way that you pay the artist is actually embedded in the piece of content. And the idea of that was to create a content-centric network where it's not about the place, it's about the piece of content.
I haven't thought about this before, but now as you're describing BitTorrent, and full disclosure as well, I spent a lot of time on BitTorrent back in the day as well. We're not going to go too deep into that, but that seemed like it was really the start of, if I think back, I certainly didn't put it together until this moment, but that for me was probably the beginning of like the inklings of decentralization, the way that content was distributed, the way that you got to access content. That to me, I was just had like an aha moment. It's like, oh, that was completely decentralized. I wasn't getting it from one person. It was like everybody putting together these little packets and then you getting this whole thing that comes together as one, whether it's music or a film or whatever. But it certainly was the beginning or the makings of decentralization. Did you know that in the moment then, Matt? Was that what you grasped onto?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I think BitTorrent is still the most widely distributed piece of decentralized technology. I mean, billions and billions and billions of people use BitTorrent or have downloaded it. We used to have 800,000 to a million people downloading our software every single day. At one point, it was 30% of all internet traffic. It was a higher percentage of internet traffic than HTTP. So like the web, it was bigger than the web at a certain point. When I joined, we had more users than Hulu, Spotify, and Netflix combined and doubled.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was weird because we thought at the time, well, like, this is so obviously the future
Mm-hmm.
because it was already sort of clear then, like, but it was pretty clear like where Facebook and centralized platforms were kind of going to take us. So everybody at BitTorrent, we thought, well, this is inevitable.
Yeah.
I still think it's inevitable. I think we were like 10 years too early.
Mm-hmm.
But we really were convinced like this is the internet should be built like this. Web 1 was built like this. This was the idea. And yeah, loads of people still use BitTorrent, but yeah, it's way more widely used than crypto, all of crypto.
Mm-hmm. So BitTorrent, I think Kraken,
Mhm.
Palm, because I want
Yeah.
to get to the present. I want to talk about what you're doing.
Let's get here. Let's get here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to talk about is it, what am I saying? Am I saying Broadside or is I saying BASEJump? What did you
Well,
say?
BaseJump's the company. Look, let me do all of it because I'm taking too long. So let me do all of it real quick. But while I was at Kraken, I met a guy called Benny Jang, who was working on a project called Crypto Kitties and was part of the founding team of a company called Dapper Labs. And we did a Kraken Crypto Kitty with them. And they were telling me about this new token standard they're working on called ERC 721. And when they told me what 721 did, I realized like this was the unit of content we've been trying to create at BitTorrent. Like this was the content-centric network where you could have a JPEG or a CryptoKitty or an album or a movie or whatever it was, and the file was where the power resided. That was the intelligence at the edge idea, and I got really, really into it. And that was I've been in NFTs ever since. I worked with a company after Kraken called Authentic Artists, which did a big music NFT project called Warps. And then, yeah, I met Dan Heyman when he and Joe Lubin and Joe Haig and the crew were forming Palm. The chief strategy officer at Consensus, which Palm span out of, was the former head of product at BitTorrent and is still a dear friend of mine. And he said, yeah, you should go do this. Like they're trying to build the thing that we wanted to build at BitTorrent. And I really thought in 2021, I was like, this is it. We're finally doing it.
Well, I
We're
mean,
finally
in
going to
all
do.
fairness, Joe Lubin, right? I mean, how could you not think that was going to, you had the guy,
Yeah.
So
You had Joe Lubin, you had David Heyman, who
yeah,
produced the Harry Potter series, you had
great,
Joe
great
Haig, who
team.
had a great team. And at the moment just seemed like nothing can go wrong. interest rates are never going to change.
How would
Yeah.
you explain decentralization to the average person who
Yeah.
doesn't care about crypto, doesn't really care about NFTs? How would you describe decentralization or define it rather?
I think it's the idea that your data belongs to you, your stuff belongs to you, and it's been very hard to sort of see that. And that's honestly what we're trying to build now at BaseJump. Is I think the moment is finally here when it's going to make it easy to show people and involve people in a decentralized ecosystem without having to tell them what it means. So just to get to BaseJump and what we're doing, so we're building a discovery layer for the next internet. So what that means is basically we're building a game loadout screen where if you've got avatars, if you've got digital objects that belong to you, it could be, if it's stuff from games, it could be weapons, it could be clothing, it could be your characters. You can equip those avatars with objects, and then you can load out to hundreds of thousands of games, worlds, creative platforms, VTubing platforms using blockchain connected VRM files. A VRM is a very low poly file, low res file that works in a lot of different places. It's super easy to use. Like they work as filters in social networks, they work as characters in games. And when you pin one to the blockchain, suddenly you've got a truly interoperable file. So the way BaseJump works is if you've got a wallet, and if you sign up for BaseJump, you get a wallet. We're working with, we've got MoonPay as an infrastructure partner on the back end. So it's really easy to sign up. You don't need to understand crypto, but it's like, here's your stuff, here's your game character, or here's your digital object, however you got here. And then these are all the places you can go. And we serve you the most relevant search result or discovery recommendation based on the stuff you've got in your wallet, the things that you equip, where you've been in metaverse worlds or games before, and all of the sort of Web2 heuristics you can search that Google might search. So I think no one understood the term metaverse because it's very misleading. It sounds like it's a place when really the idea is it's your identity, your objects, and your data and your social graph, but you get to own it and you get to take those things to lots and lots of different places. So that's what we're building with BaseJump. And we think finally when people see this is what the next evolution of the internet is, they'll understand that this is completely different from Web 2 and there's a bunch of new possibilities here.
So what I'm hearing is this, and I know that my 11-year-old stepson already gets this because he's Roblox, and he buys the skins. And I know that the idea is you can take an asset and move it and take it with you anywhere. So it doesn't need to simply live. If he bought a skin in Roblox, it no longer now has to stay in Roblox.
Exactly. And then I guess the other thing that no gamers have not seen yet, but I think it's going to be one of these moments where people are just get really excited is it's not just that you can take your thing with you, it's that it's network aware. So it does other things in other places. So let me give you an example. If you equip a broadside avatar with a broadside weapon that we built for BaseJump and you take it into Nifty Island, it fires bullets because Nifty Island is a capture the flag game and that's what weapons do there. If you take that same weapon into our rave warehouse on the Monaverse Metaverse platform, that gun fires glow sticks because it knows that it's in Mona and that's what you do there. So like having an object, like you take your skin from Roblox, but then it gets you to the front of the line at Universal Theme Park on that ride, like having things that are context aware is going to be, I don't even think we scratched the surface of how much fun that's going to be.
Yeah.
And this isn't hype anymore. Like all of this works now. So I think it's going to be like a little while before people start to see that and connect these dots. But that's really what we're trying to do because this world is here now.
So I thought there was an aspect of Broadside that was around storytelling. And I thought can you talk a little bit about that aspect, or is that no longer a part of it?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, no, that was totally part of Broadside. So, yeah, we didn't even talk about Broadside, but so Broadside was a storytelling project that my co-founder, Vector, Mel Drew, who was also one of the co-founders of Rewind magazine with me back in the day, we were doing this side project while I was at Palm called Broadside. It was this story about this decentralized group of kids hacking this game. And we're like, yeah, let's do this. This makes sense. Let's do it as an NFT project. Like it's an anonymous, decentralized main character. Let's make that into 7,000 PFPs. That seems like it fits. What we did with Broadside and what the Broadside community did with Broadside after we launched it were two totally different things. So we dropped this project where you get a character and then we dropped you episodes of a story. And then once you had all the episodes, you could merge them, burn them into a Broadside book with your character on the cover. So we've had our community paid for an additional 45,000 Broadside NFTs. So they really stayed on this story journey with us, which was great. But very soon after we launched Broadside, two of the community members built a rave warehouse on the Mona platform called the Broadside Rave Bunker and just started throwing parties there every week, which they do to this day. And that very quickly became the most visited place in the open metaverse. And this is what always happens with subcultures is like when they start, there might be a moment of hype. It's quickly followed by this sort of trough of disillusionment. It's similar to tech, right? And we sort of realized we're in this trough of disillusionment with Web3 and the metaverse. And it's just sort of like, all right, this is one of those times when everyone's fearful and it's time to be greedy. It's time to build, it's time to invest. And we realized that because they were going to the metaverse every single week and building and playing together, we realized we had the most valuable group of reference customers in Web3. Like if Mark Zuckerberg can't figure out the metaverse, but these kids, like these 2,000 kids are just going here every week. I mean, it's like built for them, you know? So that's what BASEJump was built around.
I'm glad you touched on the community because that was something that I really wanted to get into with you. I think, and I might be biased as someone who focuses on communities in the space, I think that community is Web3's like gateway drug, right?
Yeah.
And your community, the Broadside community, is ridiculous. I think I tapped into your spaces on X every now and again, and it is unbelievable. It is literally, like you said, it's like a rave. There's music. The energy is so incredibly infectious. How do you cultivate a community like that? Because you're absolutely right. I think Zuckerberg and all of the other Web2 founders, everybody would love to have a community as engaged as you do. You can't buy that. You can't email market that. How did you build this community? Talk about how you keep them engaged, particularly during the downturn, because I mean, we're just coming out of the bear market now, but I'm very curious as to how you managed to cultivate such a passionate, engaged community during one of the lowest downturns that we've had in the space in quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, we did what we knew. I think with Broadside, music is a big part of the Broadside story. And when we were thinking about, well, what should we do on Twitter Spaces to promote Broadside, there's this type of music in the story. It's set in 2037. There's this type of music called 3D bass in Broadside. And it's kind of the evolution of bass music. So I know, let's go on Twitter and let's just do like pirate radio shows like we used to. And let's play like old grime records that most people in the States have never, ever heard and just pretend it's from 2037 because it still sounds like it's from 2037. It's just the maddest, weirdest music. So we started doing that. And, you know, there's certain game mechanics that work really well in clubs and on pirate radio. Like one is shouting people out. So like we're just very vocal. Like if you're in the room, at some point we're going to call your name out and say hello to you. And like when I was a kid, that was the fun. I listened to pirate radio because I could text the studio and they would say shout out to Matt and his friend or whatever.
Yeah, that acknowledgement goes a long way.
Yeah, it's like it's that validation, acknowledgement. It's a dopamine hit, and the biggest dopamine hit of all in all of club music is the reload. And so we just started doing that. It's like if you hear something you like, mash the buttons on Twitter. Let us know. The expression we use is bones up. If people start hitting that button, we reload the track, we play it again, and we say who we reloaded it for. And that is literally just what we did on pirate radio 20 years ago. A close friend of mine and one of my mentors was a guy called David Mancuso, who lived in New York and started a club in the late 60s, a club called The Loft, which was the type of music he started playing there came to be known as disco. And then two of the DJs at the Loft, one was a guy called Frankie Knuckles, who left New York for Chicago and started a club called The Warehouse, which is where house music comes from. And David's boyfriend and one of the other DJs there was a guy called Larry Levan, who started a club called the Paradise Garage up the street, which is where garage music comes from. David fought the city and beat them, and that's why the New York cabaret laws changed, and 200 discos opened. And like David Mancuso was, I felt very lucky to call him a friend. I met him when I was writing my book, and I wanted to interview him to just understand, like basically asking the question you just asked me is, how do you cultivate community? Because what David did on one dance floor in New York, through disco, through house, through garage, and all of the mutations of that, to this day touches billions and billions of people. And he was very deliberate in terms of, he made sure that the Loft was the first place that you had black, white, gay, straight people all on one dance floor together. And he was very deliberate about, I'm going to get all of these groups of people together. And they're going to feel safe and they're going to feel loved on this dance floor. And he was trying to recreate this room in an orphanage that he grew up in upstate New York. It's this crazy story. I won't get into it. It's too long, but the rooms that we build and the dance floors that we create and the people that we invite onto them, and being deliberate in making sure that people feel seen and safe and included in those spaces, I think that is the only way we can build the next evolution of the web. And so that's really how Vector and I started with Broadside. And I think because we've been very, very deliberate about channeling what David and what everyone in dance music tries to communicate through music, it's held that community together. Like, nothing is better than music to bring people together. It just works.
Looking to grow your digital art collection? Art Scout International is here to help. We provide expert curation to help collectors like you find the perfect additions. Start curating your future with Art Scout today.
I love that there was that very clear intention to make it as inclusive as possible, to really build culture within that community. And I can attest to the fact that there is nothing like when you guys get going, it's the energy is really amazing to experience. And I know that sense of belonging is really important. And I think that's something that you all do very, very well. You mentioned Vector. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about him. I know you guys have been friends for a long time, but he's also a very important artist, a very important creator in Web3. Maybe touch a little bit and talk to us about your friendship and how he's involved in the project.
Yeah, I mean, the project Vector is the heart and soul of it, absolutely. So, I mean, he and I met when we were at Rewind. I think I was 23 when we started Rewind, and Vector was, I think, 16 years old the first time I met him. And Rewind used to be 5 of us in the back of a record shop in South London. Actually, it was 4 of us. 5 was Vector was like the 5th co-founder. But he was 16 and he would come into this like office in the back of a record shop, and he was designing flyers for a very early grime crew in London called the So Solid crew, late garage or early grime, depending on how you look at it. And and then one day he comes in, he's like, listen, I can build you a really good website. Your website's terrible. We're like, what? Like, all right, like, cool. And I remember his kind of job interview with the publisher. He was like, what are you doing right now? He's like, well, I just got fired from a dog racing track for stealing peanuts and setting fire to a dustbin. And we sort of looked at each other, all right, you're hired. Like, go and sit over there, build the best website in England or whatever you can do. And he did. That's the thing, the crazy thing about, and that was like, I always just loved Vector as a mate, because he's just one of those people who's so funny. But like, I'd seen what he did next. He just came in and he sat in the corner and he just stared at that screen for like 12 hours a day. And 6 months later, we had one of the most popular websites in the UK. We'd get more traffic than Ministry of Sound and MTV. We were doing viral video series before YouTube existed, that like Adidas and Missy Elliott and people were paying to be a part of. It was just like, the thing he came and built, like Rewind was, as a print magazine, already sort of took on a life of its own, but he he built this digital engine to it that was incredible. And I watched him teach himself every single thing he needed to learn. He's one of those people that just sits down and is like, I'm going to figure this out, and then I'm going to be brilliant at it. He's constantly done that in his career. And after Rewind, we just stayed friends because we were friends. He's like a brother to me, honestly. And then we both just I was a BitTorrent, he was getting into crypto early, and he was the first person, I think, after Benny Jang was 721, it was Vector saying, are you in this NFT thing? Like, what? I'm super into this. And he started showing me the things he was doing. The first NFT I ever bought was one of his pieces, but he very quickly became this important crypto artist just because he's good at two things. He's brilliant, like technologically, he'll teach himself anything. He can just understand anything, but he's also this just like connector, and like he was just finding people in the world and helping them, and very quickly became an important early crypto artist.
Something that I read about what you're doing with this project is you're giving IP rights to holders. I think that's pretty interesting, partly because that's a big topic of contention in the space. Do you give IP rights? Do you not give IP rights, et cetera, et cetera? And I know that you are empowering people in your community to actually build new things based on the IP rights that you've conveyed to them. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a really interesting aspect of your community.
Yeah, I think the thing to fear is not someone taking something from you. The thing to fear is obscurity. This goes back to the piracy stuff. It's like, don't worry about being pirated, worry about not being pirated. And so like he was like, this Broadside thing is a PFP project. And he said, like, let's do it now when the market's down, because and I think he literally said, like, this is going to be like dubstep was when no one thought it was cool, and this is when we'll really find something. And he was just so right on that. But with the IP stuff, we were both like, it was honestly, it was just never a question. Of course, everyone's going to have the IP rights. And then we used a lot of CC0 material from other collections. Like you can get Broadsiders wearing Nouns hoodies or Moonbirds helmets, or, like crypto stuff. There's a bunch of different collections that are featured as either stickers or clothing on Broadside characters. And we decided, well, any Broadsider that's got a CC0 element to it, those ones are all CC0, and all the rest get full commercial rights. And then the other thing we did was we created this Broadside sub-brand called B-Side, and we made all these B-Side brand assets and gave it to the community and said, you can use these to build new businesses or whatever you want using a Broadside IP. So you don't just have the character, but you actually have some like brand language that you can use, which looks a bit like the sort of main Broadside IP. We made sure that the main Broadside mark was not CC0 and only we could use that, just so we could say these things are by Matt and Vector, and everything else here is connected to this, but it's built by the community. And for the most part, that's worked really well. I mean, we've seen people have started, I can think there's 3 clothing companies that have been built around Broadside. There's a Roblox game that the community built. That was the point of Broadside, was decentralize this entire franchise. There are derivative NFT collections with whole new stories. Just so much IP has been created on top of Broadside kind of as a platform.
Mm-hmm.
That was always the idea for us. It was like, this is not contentious. We should do the only contentious bit has been if people have like said they're going to do something and then they've taken money from people and not done it. Like those things are not good, and that there is a downside to it, right? Like if you don't control your IP, you don't control your IP.
Do you see a thread? Because I'm picking up, for me anyway, I see a definite thread throughout your entire career. If you take it from everything you've told us, the pirate radio, Kraken, BitTorrent, Palm, to now, I see a very clear connection. I wonder if you see a connection, and if you do, what is it?
I think it's decentralizing culture. I mean, that's always the thing. Like the anybody getting to anything with a Broadsider is just like any kid getting to start a radio station. It's just like, I know that if you put things at the edge like that, good things happen. Like we would not have started BASEJump if we'd not given Broadsiders the right to use Broadside in any way they wanted. They showed us what the right thing to do next was, because we did that. Like, music wouldn't be one of Britain's biggest exports if pirate radio didn't exist, if there wasn't this incubator for new culture and new sounds. So it's just like that idea. Yeah, it's very, very clear to me. But I think, like, if you look at my LinkedIn, I look like someone who's done a bunch of really random, disconnected things. But for me, it's like, no, I've been on the same mission my whole life. I will be on the same mission my whole life, because there's so much more to do. But decentralized culture is just so, so key to everything we do, and all the meaning that we make as humans.
I think we just honed in on the title for your episode. I love that, decentralizing culture. Something that I mentioned in the intro for this podcast is part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I feel like crypto and Web3 have a reputational problem. I think all we hear, and there is a propensity to share bad news before you share good news. So, the FTXs, the SBFs, the Sam Bankman-Fried thing, that goes further than the good things that are happening in this space. Mm-hmm. How do we change that from within? So if I gave you the magic wand and I said, hey, fix this problem for the average person, help to change their mind, how do we get past those negative things?
I think it starts with us and what we choose to build in this space. And it's really tough, because there's so much temptation, and there's so much, I don't want to say easy money, because it's still difficult to build anything here, but it's easier to build a new type of AMM or DEX than it is to build something that might mean something to the average person in the street. Like, we do a really bad job of showing people why crypto could impact their lives. But we should be telling normal people what this does. Like, this could impact inequality. This could change so many things. If you think about, imagine if cloud computing, when it started, had this giant casino nailed to it. It would have completely distorted it. And that is what crypto is like. We have this technology which you could use to do a lot of very interesting and a lot of very mundane things as well, that would marginally improve people's lives. But at scale, it would improve things by orders of magnitude. But speculation distorts everything. So we don't do those things, or those things don't get funded, or people ignore those things because there's not an airdrop attached to it. I hate this shit, but I also have a Harry Potter Sonic Obama t-shirt because I fucking love this shit. It's so funny. It is so stupid. But it's brilliant. But even in the meme, I'm not even going to pick on meme coins, because I actually think there's something, like, we're not onboarding the next billion users if we're telling them all they're getting a special thing that's definitely going to be worth as much as a Bored Ape this time next year. There's just this huge problem we have in, we're all affected by the speculation, and the only thing newcomers have heard other than scams is speculation. And so it affects them too. So people come into this thinking, I want the number to go up. And I think, like, again, with BASEJump, we want to give people a platform. It's like, here is a character for a video game character. You own it, you own all of its stuff, and you can go and play with it anywhere. At no point are we going to talk to you about a number going up. That's just a new gaming thing you haven't seen before, and it's fun. And it wouldn't work without blockchain. And I think those are the types of products we need to build, where it's like, here is a genuinely novel, interesting, fun new thing you haven't seen before. And it's only possible because of this new type of tech. Like, we don't need to say that, but you're going to understand. Suddenly you understand, like, oh, okay, like, yeah, Web3, it makes more sense to me now. Like, it's about interoperability. It's about connectivity.
You unwittingly answered my next question, because I literally was going to say, how then do we onboard the next million or the next billion? I think that's the $1 million question that we're all dealing with. But I think you're right. It has to do more with the experience than the speculation. And I think for better or for worse, we've all got caught up in the speculation.
Mm.
I sort of land on the art side of things because the art that I buy in the space is really, I don't care if it goes up or if it goes down.
Yeah.
I have purchased it because I think it's beautiful and because I'm adding to my collection. And so I think if we can get to the heart of that for the average person and get rid of this, oh, we have this cartoon picture of an ape.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the big headline story, but I don't think that's the way forward. And I do agree that it has to be experience based. Two more questions for you. First one is, what's next now for you, for the project, Broadside, Battleship, BASEJump, all of it?
Yeah.
What's next?
We're getting ready to launch BASEJump. We're also in the middle of fundraising, which is always fun. But we're thinking about this launch, and we're thinking about we want to get avatars out there, but we don't want it to be a 10,000 collection, a PFP. We want to onboard millions of people, so we're sort of looking at hybrid tokenomics, somewhere between 3D avatars as a product, but under the hood, how do you mint 1 billion or 1 million, and how do you do that in a way that helps people share them without worrying too much about numbers going up or anything going up? And I think I'm the same as you. I buy things because I like them. Like, I've never sold a piece of art on my wall, and I've never sold an NFT. I'm the worst NFT trader in the world. I buy them because I like them, and I just keep them. It would never occur to me to sell one. But like, I think the real value that we haven't unlocked with all of these things yet is the sentimental value, which is why you and I buy things, right? But like, I think this especially of like digital characters and objects, digital pieces of clothing, like those things, yeah, maybe you'll sell them for more than you bought them, just like you might sell a real pair of sneakers for more than you bought them or something, but it's not going to be, you're not going to retire on it. But the main reason, like, I think I would want to keep a character from a game or an object that I used in a virtual world with my friends is because it means something to me. And because, it's a souvenir of an idea of a time in my life. Like, there's lots of goods that were like this, like books. We'll have books on our shelves that stay there for years and we never read them again, but we keep them there because we like that book. And just having it on the shelf is a souvenir of that idea. Having digital objects that just matter to you because of your experience with them, that is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. That's bigger than all of the speculation. That's bigger than all of the crypto trading. And we haven't got there yet because it's not quite time. But I think between this jump we're making in terms of 3D file formats and interoperability, and this jump we're making with new token standards like ERC 6551 or ERC 404 that let you do all these crazy new things, we are at one of these moments again where I'm just sort of feeling like all of the building blocks are here. It's really time to put them together, and the putting together of those building blocks is what we're doing at BASEJump.
Awesome. So let's say I'm an average person. I'm listening to this podcast. I love what you just said. How do I get involved?
Go follow Broadside and BASEJump on Twitter. And that's the best place to get updates from us. We are starting to roll out the launch over the next couple of months. Still sort of figuring out. There's a lot here, right? We're building an interoperable tool set that works across a lot of worlds and games. We're building a platform where you'll get to go and play with all these avatars, and we're sort of figuring out the underlying tokenomics of how we're going to distribute them. And we've got some other really fun stuff planned as well. But yeah, just give us a follow on Twitter and stay there for updates.
Awesome. Okay, Matt, our final question is, tell me what culture means to you.
Culture is how we make sense of the world around us, is how we find meaning, is how we convey how we feel to each other. And then subculture, I think specifically the way I'm interested in it, like if culture is how we communicate and share and connect at a societal level, subculture is our R&D department. That's where we go to dream, right? That's the first dance floor where you have gay, straight, black, white people all together, and you say, look, it's not such a bad idea, right, guys? Maybe we should scale that. Like, that's what subcultures have always done, is like, let's try something new and see how it feels if we do it in this small setting. And when subcultures scale, it's because the idea they were transmitting was a really, really great idea.
That was a great answer, by the way. Matt, thank you so much for joining me, taking time out of your day to
Thank
chat
you.
with me. It's always good to chat with you. As I recall saying when we were at Palm that you were the heartbeat of that company, and I see that passion and that enthusiasm still continues. So it's great to be able to chat with you about what you're working on. We'll put all of your information in the show notes so that folks can stay in touch and see what you're doing next. Really thankful for your time.
Likewise, thank you so, so much.
As we wrap up this episode of Proof of Culture, I would like to extend a huge thank you to Matt for sharing his insights and experiences with me. His journey, I think, is really a powerful reminder of the importance of creators and communities in driving forward the next wave of culture. I hope that this conversation has inspired you to think differently about the future of digital ownership, collaboration, and the role of culture in this new era. Thanks so much again for tuning in, and don't forget to check out Broadside and BASEJump to see Matt's work in action. Stay connected with us for more stories from the visionaries building the future of Web3. Until next time, keep building, keep creating, and keep proving the power of culture.